Better than taking all the tablets you're taking. I can relate to that. Someone else over there second that. Good.
But I have been also told it's not good for you.
So that's good?
I've also been told it's not good for you.
Who told you that?
When you watch on TV, you hear about people saying that it affects your brain in certain ways and things like that.
So TV talking about cannabis affecting the brain?
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it say? Does it affect it in a good way or a bad way?
Bad way.
A bad way. So it's not that it's good for your brain, it's bad for your brain.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what I was expecting to hear that from someone. That's good to hear. Anyone else? That's brilliant, thank you. Anyone else want to bring anything else in that they've heard in the news, media, friends, family, doctors?
It's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug? Yeah, they do say that one. What does that mean? Does anyone know what it means, a gateway drug?
It's not alcohol and you can't tax it. Somebody ain't making no fat money on it, it's taking it offshore.
Yeah, it's true, that is.
It's a gateway drug, you can't have it.
No, it's true. The gateway theory is that once you've tried cannabis, it will make you take other drugs, harder drugs, heavier drugs like heroin, cocaine, things that are quite seriously addictive. Interestingly, the gateway theory, as it's called, has been disproved, and they've actually proven that the gateway drug itself generally is alcohol. Alcohol tends to be the first drug that most people try, then it tends to be tobacco. That's ignoring caffeine, sugar, and what they call theobromide, which is in chocolate. So ignoring those other recreational drugs, alcohol is where most people start. What's that? Thank you. So, anything else? So we've got it's bad for your brain, but it can be good for you, can be good for pain. Anything else? Gateway drug. The trials of dementia are doing incredibly well. Yeah, that's right. I've got a little talk bit in there about that. They're doing really well with dementia. Anything else?
Yeah, the government did a huge U-turn and actually recognised its medical benefits at last.
That's very recent. Yeah, it did. Yeah. Okay.
Stop seizures.
You already know what you're talking about. Okay then. Kelly O'Neill's a bit of an expert when it comes to epilepsy. Unfortunately, we all have our conditions. Kelly can't join us on the stage last second. I'm going to say it because of anxiety. One of the beefs that she has to battle, like many people do, which is unfortunate because she is a wealth of knowledge with epilepsy. I've learned so much from you, Kelly. Okay, so I'll get started then. So, how long has cannabis been around? Forever. Yeah, forever. They're showing the way it's evolved and the way that every species has an endocannabinoid system, which is this beautiful diagram here, and I'll talk about more in a minute, that it's evolved throughout time on this planet. So in terms of human history, it's been legal forever until very recent terms, 1930s. So, and they've got documented uses. By the way, I'm looking at this screen, it's my laptop. I did have a lovely little pretty thing for you to look at, projector thing, but technology didn't work, so you haven't got it to look at, I'm sorry. So I'm going to look at my screen to tell you. So yeah, 7000 BC was about some of the first documented uses of cannabis. So that's, when I say documented, that's in some sort of text, recorded. And that was used for textiles, for therapeutic reasons, for recreational and relaxational purposes, and also for religious and spiritual purposes. Cannabis has played a big part in many, many religions over the history of mankind. Apparently in 1997, a hemp rope was found, and they dated it back to 26,900 BC, and that was found in Czechoslovakia, and that makes it the oldest known object associated with cannabis. So hemp rope, I'll tell you what hemp rope is in a minute compared to cannabis. So the cultivation of cannabis can be traced back at least 12,000 years to humanity. So that means humans have been cultivating cannabis and using it as the resource it is and should be used as for at least 12,000 years that we know of. And that was probably around when we started, rather than being nomadic hunter-gatherers as you went along, to actually settling down and trying to do a bit of farming. So that was a big time for us. Now, in 2737 BC, the Chinese Emperor Sheng Nung, he recorded cannabis as a medicinal drug. That was the first time it was recorded in history that we know about that cannabis is a medicine. So they've known about it, it's been known for that many years. what's that, 4,000 years. So he recognised it for its effectiveness for gout, for treating pains, and for rheumatism and things like that. So here's what we find out. Both hemp and psychoactive cannabis has been widely used throughout history. In China, they used literally from the root to the tip, because the roots have beneficial properties all the way through the stalk, through the leaves, through to the flowers, and to the seeds. Every part of the plant is useful, nutritious, and therapeutic. Not all of it gets you high though, that's the flower bits at the end. So they've used it throughout for textiles, for making rope, for making paper, the leaves and flowers for intoxication and for medicine, and the seeds for food and oil. The Egyptians, the Greeks and the Romans, they all utilised cannabis as well, and it basically has been throughout history. That was until 1930, when a chap from America, no, Simba's doing this. No, I'm going to give you that as a teaser. It was prohibited in 1930 in America, but I don't want to talk about that because we've got another speaker who's going to go into it in even more detail. But it was done under dodgy reasons. I mean, we're being told it's bad for us, but it was done for industrial reasons, it was done for political reasons and for corporate greed reasons.
And racial segregation in the US.
Segregation, yeah, racist reasons, forgive me, I missed that racist. It's important to mention racist, because marijuana itself is racism. I'm going to step on his toes. Sorry, I'm going to step on another speaker's toes, is what I was about to say. But he'll do it better. I'll touch it briefly. 1930s, they used to have prohibition in America. You will have heard Al Capone, he used to run the alcohol around in America. The department that used to run that, he was about to be made unemployed basically because they were ending prohibition. So because he didn't want to suddenly lose all this funding that had been funneled into prohibition and enforcing prohibition, he set up the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Harry J. Anslinger was the director. And he was a very ambitious man, so he decided to start an all-out war on the cannabis consumer. They called it a war on cannabis, but it was never a war on cannabis because you can't have a war on a plant, it's a war on the people that use the plant. So because he was so ambitious, he decided to set the target of legalising cannabis and basically run a media campaign, similar to what we see now in the newspapers, and it stirred up fear and it stirred up racism and hate. And it made people for the first time link cannabis with criminal activity. Prior to this, no one would think cannabis and crime that weren't together until this chap came along. In order to achieve it, he got friendly, or was friendly, with a chap that owned the newspapers. It happened, his name was William Randolph Hearst, and he happened to be invested in loads of interest. Don't worry about the kiddies making noise, mate. Let them chatter away, please. Let them chatter. So he was a newspaper mogul, and he was invested in the timber trade because he needed the timber to make his paper for his newspapers. But there's a bit of a civil war, and Mexico decided that they wanted to have some of the land back, and he lost 800,000 acres. So it was a bit of a loss, and some other person whose name I don't know came out with hemp paper, and it was going to be a real threat to paper. So he started publishing hate articles in the newspaper that we now refer to as reefer madness. And he basically printed out loads of lies about cannabis and what it does to people. Yes, mate?
You know about the DuPont company?
This is my next point, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Exactly where I'm about to go. Because not only did you have the politician Anslinger, and then you've got the newspaper mogul Randolph Hearst, you then had a company called DuPont, which basically is a petroleum company. And so they had a lot of industry for petrol. So far we've got politicians, timber and petrol. And then also the pharmaceutical company decided to join in, and tobacco also, because they knew, like these industries still know today, and why they still pay out politicians to keep the laws the way they do today, because cannabis, hemp, marijuana, is a huge threat to all of those industries, because it has the capacity, the potential to replace all those industries. So we could actually do away with petroleum, we could do away with timber and cotton, or we could maybe use less of them, if not do away with them. But these powerful people that have invested in it, they're going to lose fortunes, and they didn't want to lose fortunes. So they twisted laws.
We've got a lot of enemies. We've got a lot of enemies.
Enemies?
Yeah, we've got a lot of them.
Who do you mean by we?
Us, cannabis people.
The kind of community?
Yeah.
We're one of the most persecuted communities on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oil industry, coal industry,
Yeah,
gas industry, nuclear industry,
Yeah. Farmers.
pharmaceutical,
Yeah.
tobacco.
Threat to the lot. And this is what they realised back in 1930s. So you might think, well, what's 1930s got to do with 2018? And I used to think the same. But believe it or not, the same's occurred in this country. So, okay, it was corrupt politicians and businessmen keeping it the way they wanted it for their own ends. They lied to the people, told them it was dangerous, they criminalised people for it. And now, right now, in this country, we have our Prime Minister, Theresa May, her husband, Philip May, and his investment company, Capital Group, who he works for. When I say it's his company, it's not his company he works for. But through the chain of ownership, Capital Group owned Monsanto, which owned Bayer, which was then contracted to our very own homegrown British company, GW Pharmaceuticals. You may have heard of them. GW Pharmaceuticals happens to be the world's largest cultivator and distributor of medicinal cannabis in the world. I say that medicinal cannabis because all cannabis is medicinal, unless it's got heavy metals or fungi in it or something. But generally, cannabis is therapeutic. You don't have to have this illusionary medicinal cannabis. So this company is selling it all around the world, shipping it out everywhere. It's in Britain. And the people that are invested in it, like our drugs minister and her husband, Paul Kenwood, he happens to be the director of British Sugar, and he's grown 45 acres of cannabis. They call it hemp because it's got less than 0.1 THC. Ooh. So the very people in this country that stand up in our parliament, and I've seen it on live TV, Theresa May saying cannabis has got no therapeutic value. Okay? She said it in Parliament. It has. She puts a little word in there, raw. Okay? Raw cannabis has got no therapeutic value. It has. And they're invested in it and making hundreds of billions of pounds or dollars in profit. And it's like a little spider web of MPs and businesses that are all helping each other and keeping it all criminalised, because it's not illegal, and denied to the public. So, yes, they know it can help. And the reason they know it can help, I wish I could show you this.
Turn it around.
They won't see it, it's tiny.
We'll put it on a slideshow for you afterwards.
I don't know if you can see that.
Put it on a slideshow.
Here, you won't see it. Here you've got, thank you. Here you've got Paul Kenwood. Paul Kenwood is the director of British Sugar. His beloved wife, Victoria Ackland, she's our UK drugs minister, and she's opposed to cannabis law reform vehemently. She's a real prohibitionist. And then on this side, we then have here Philip May, who's the Prime Minister's husband, and then obviously Theresa May, our Prime Minister. So, oh, could you hold that up, please, my beautiful assistant? Could you take my laptop?
I actually walked around Parliament Square.
That's the Home Office.
Posing actually outside the Home Office.
Oh, it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. So yeah, basically the very people that stand there and tell you folks, you good people that believe them, it's got no therapeutic value, they're lying through their teeth, basically while they allow their company that they've invested in make patents, and then they can then deliver cannabis-based products, very profitable price, back to the public when they get sick. And I'll explain why you get sick in just a minute. So this is the modern day corruption that's happening. So what was happening in the 1930s is still happening now today. We've got people in political power. They have known the truth. I've got the reports just on the table over there from 1998, right? They've known the absolute truth about cannabis and how beneficial it is to human health. But they suppressed that report, and they decided to continue telling us, good people, that cannabis is bad for our health, and it's bad, causes psychosis, bad for your brain. Go on to that, don't ever forget. So basically, they're lying through their teeth while we suffer. My story is, how did I find it? I wasn't always a fan of Weekend Assigned. That's only happened 7 months ago. I've now got 3,500 followers nearly that have joined me, not followers, they've joined me. Yeah, acquaintance, comrades. That's what we got in it, comrades, comrades. So I was a teacher. I'm a father of 3, dotted around, a lovely wife's around too. I was a teacher. I used to teach English to speakers of the languages, Spanish, adult literacy and numeracy. I taught in college. I've actually used cannabis since I was 16. Started using cannabis at 16 because a friend peer pressured me into it. I was actually against drugs and against cannabis. I remember I was in Wales. We read a book called Melis, which basically means the sweet smoke. And this book was about how bad cannabis and how it makes you go mad, funnily enough. And so I can still vividly remember being conditioned that cannabis was bad. A friend peer pressured me into smoking it, and they're all right, even. Up to that point, I was literally suicidal. I've been abused as a kid, physically, mentally, and sexually, by the locals because I was English. And they were Welsh, and they didn't like me. No disrespect to you, my brother. This was in North Wales, yeah. North Wales, they hate us a bit more than they do in the south. And now, knowing the history, actually, I understand why they hate the English. I would too if I were them. But I wasn't. They shouldn't have hated me. I wouldn't have done it. Anyway, long story short, it's a bit suicidal. Called PTSD, I've now learned. And this friend pressured me into smoking. It's not actually now. And I tried it, and I stopped suicidal instantly. I stopped, just all this clamour in my head. I disagree with suicide, so I do things to take a risk and nearly kills. It's like walking for the lorries and stuff. It is going, isn't it?
That's a shout. Technology. So because I was suicidal and basically wanted to kill myself, thank you, Joe, you're a legend. This cannabis just turned the voice off. It just stopped me feeling that way. It took away my girls and allowed me to function. Can you hear me at the back? No. And I felt okay. And I felt bad because society's telling me cannabis is bad, you shouldn't use cannabis, you're a criminal. So I carried on secretly throughout my entire life. Thank you, darling. So, you know, I started college and things like that. Dropped out, went to work, did loads of jobs, and my health failed on me, and I had to have operations on my hands. I'd used cannabis all through that, but secretly. I hated alcohol. I became a teacher. The reason I became a teacher was because of my health condition. I had to have both of my arms shortened. I used to do mountain biking in North Wales because I had no way of getting anywhere. The pre-suspension days, it made my arms grow too long, my ulnar bone. So because that ulnar bone grew 4 millimetres too long, my wrist was destroying itself. So I got to the stage, I couldn't write, I couldn't hold a pen, I couldn't do anything. And I went to the surgeon and begged him, you know, fuse my bones together, just please, do it like that so I can still fly fish and I will adapt to everything else. And he said, no, I'm not going to fuse your bones, but I will shorten them. And that should hopefully relieve the pressure and you will have improved symptoms. Not a cure, but improvement. Right, I'm desperate. I want you to chop the bloody things off. Let's do it. So he did it. We started doing it. And that's when I went home and started Googling. I knew tobacco is a toxin, bone toxin. It's poison tobacco. So I started Googling what's the effect of cannabis on the body. Bear in mind I've used it for 19 years at this point and never actually thought, what does this do to me? I ignored the government because I didn't believe them anyway. But I started Googling. I wrote to the government and said, I've nearly been killed 4 times by pharmaceuticals. I had a mini-stroke scare from citalopram. I had a brain hemorrhage scare from beta blockers. And then I had a cancer scare from tramadol, plus about 40 other horrendous side effects that I can't even remember to list. They were terrible. And still haven't recovered from to this day, actually. And then I had a third one, which was a liver cancer scare from Zomorph. So that was recent, that was recent. So basically pharmaceutical drugs have nearly killed me off 4 times, and now I'm terrified to take them. And this started in 2014. And I came home to my children and said, well, these drugs have nearly killed me again, because I had to go through me going in hospital. And I said, there's this one thing that helps me, but the government tell me I'm not allowed it, and I shouldn't use it. And this Katie Chase turned to me and said, Well, you better write them a letter down and tell them they're wrong, haven't you?
I used to like writing letters.
Yeah, we did a lot of letter writing. So that's what I did. And I wrote to them and told them my research. I told them about Philip Robson's report. I didn't know that they'd had it, that said cannabis is remarkably therapeutic. They need time to develop a marketable and profitable, patentable cannabis-based product. And the government should find an alternative to criminalising people who use cannabis to assuage their symptoms. Okay? 1998, they were told that. They rejected it on the very same day. Very same day they rejected that recommendation. And then at the same time, GW Pharmaceuticals was set up. And Philip Robson, the fellow that wrote the report, became their medical director. And then now we find out that our current leaders are invested in it. So hold on, you've chosen to prosecute for the last 20 years. From 2007 to 2016, 1.5 million teenagers probably were prosecuted for cannabis possession. 1.5 million. That was just possession, exactly. Imagine if it was for... Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Imagine if your statistic was in it too. So that's 1.5 million people for possession. How many for growing? How many for sharing? How many people altogether have been prosecuted for choosing cannabis? This thing, no, put it this way. This thing here, is what my research I found, because I was a good academic.
Can you still see that over that side?
I'm talking in bouncing back and forth,
If you
sorry.
don't lock people up for something, you can't then point at the statistics and go, look, there's bad stuff going on.
And there's a lot of profit in prohibition, a lot of profit. I injured my hip putting up a huge tent, and that was what stopped me being active. And in the time of being injured, I lost all my muscle mass. And then it turned out I've got this underlying health condition called, well, it's now chronic myofascial pain from joint hypermobility syndrome, which basically means a shed load of pain 24/7 with sloppy joint syndrome. My collagen is faulty, it overstretches, so my ankles dislocate, my fingers partially dislocate, and it's getting worse as time goes on. But it was only through injury that I got incapacitated through pain. I started Googling and researching, and I mean, we're talking 4 years here of academic level research, not newspaper articles and stuff. We're talking academic research papers from around the world. And it's the most researched plant on the planet, more so than ibuprofen and paracetamol even. So what I found out was, it blew my head, was we've got an endocannabinoid system. So what I wanted to try and imagine is a system of pulleys or even scales. You know, a scale like a, what's it called when you have above your baby's mobile? Mobile. You know, a mobile that you have hanging above a cot. You can have a nod. Yeah? Our bodies are a finely tuned, I won't say designed, finely tuned instrument, organism of multiple body systems. We have our circulatory system, we've got our bone system, our neurological system, we have our appetite, all these other systems in our body. It turns out there's a master system, okay, none of us have ever known about, they never taught us in school, they don't even teach our doctors about it in this country very much. And that's called the endocannabinoid system. Now, endo just... Yeah. If you have a look, you'll find it's the leaflet with the black figurine on.
Literally is that, but there should have been one on everybody's chairs.
So basically, it's a master system, and every research I've found, this is why it triggered it to me. Cannabis regulates bone growth, density, and development. Edinburgh University, that was. Cannabis prevents osteoporosis, same university. Which was relevant for me. I was having bone healing surgery. I want to know it into my bones, see. So it turns out cannabis makes your bones grow properly, and it regulates that system, okay? Then I'd found one about epilepsy. God bless you people, right? And how it controls and modulates your neurological system. So these words, control, modulate, regulate, yeah? Then you find out about what's in cannabis, yeah? Essential omega-3, 6, and 9. The essential amino acids for the building blocks of life. So look at that word essential there, right? So the research basically showed this endocannabinoid system that everything has regulates all the others. Now I'm going to ask you, what happens if you've got something that regulates, you take it out, what's going to happen to the systems?
Going to go horribly wrong.
Don't want you to speak, you're not part of the audience.
Mess up.
Mess up? Yeah. Your systems will become deregulated. So in the human body, when your system becomes unregulated, diseases manifest. Okay? So, before Randall Hurst and his buddies Anslinger in the 1930s decided to interfere with the natural course of humanity for their own personal profit, it's a bit like Theresa May's doing with her husband. I know I could get killed for that, but fuck it. You know, it's got to be said, it's the truth. It's the truth. So, it was in the food chain because hemp was fed to animals. Nowadays, they feed them sweet corn, maize, as we call it here, rapeseed. You've seen the yellow fields every year, right? We don't grow that for food, not for humans anyway. It's for the beef industry and animals and all the rest of it. So now our animals are full of corn and stuff, which has actually got no nutritional value whatsoever and is virtually a poison in itself. Previously, it was full of cannabinoids because they were fed hemp. So to clarify what hemp is cannabis. Cannabis is hemp, right? Some people, excuse me, decided to figure out that 0.3% THC, which is one of the many cannabinoids, anything below a 0.23 THC level is hemp, industrial hemp. And it is different in its composition. Whereas cannabis, which is what you're all familiar with, is what we're familiar with for getting the flowers to smoke and get high with. But it's all just cannabis, is it not? Cannabis, yeah. So, I keep losing my thread. Forgive me, sorry. Yes. So, every research showed it regulates, essential, modulates, controls. It used to be in our diet, so people never used to have the illnesses that we've got now. So we have got illnesses across the board. Cancer now is 1 in 2 people statistically going to get cancer. You go back to 1930s, it was like 1 in 80 or something, or even less. Right, so you had more, okay, we've got other potential contaminants. But we haven't got in our diet anymore these cannabinoids, which is what the little bits are in cannabis, the essential oils, we haven't got them regulating our diet. Now it turns out different cannabinoids regulate different parts of your system. So that's why we're finding for epilepsy, CBD, cannabidiol, and THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. They affect differently. And they've even found, they've isolated the cannabinoid to do with hearts, they've isolated the one to do with appetite stimulation. So what they're actually doing, in my opinion, is starving us of cannabinoids, because it should still be fed to animals, which would then be fed to us, or we would be able to eat it ourselves, and it would regulate in our bodies. And it's making us sick because we're getting out of balance. Homeostasis is out of sync. So, again, someone showed a video, it was a picture of a mobile with lots of other dangly bits. You know how the baby's mobile hangs in perfect balance? But if you take one off, it all goes out. But if you add another one, it all comes back in. But it'll always find some sort of balance at the end of it. That's what our bodies do. And that's what cannabis controls. So, we all think of cannabis, we should smoke it to get high. That's how everyone thinks of cannabis, because that's all it's ever shown in the news, on the TV. But it turns out, if you look at it as a food item, which is how it should be seen, as a nutritional herb, you've got these oil paste on the front that you may have seen earlier. We've got people in the audience who are going to tell you about how their dietary practices with cannabis. If we were eating this, it would be regulating our bodies. We'd be maintaining homeostasis within our bodies. And that would be making us healthier. So we wouldn't need all those horrible pills that make us feel bad. Which again, would make the pharmaceutical company feel quite bad because they wouldn't get as much money then. Which they then wouldn't be able to give that money to the politicians that they are doing. So if you can see where I'm leading with this, they're all being paid off to keep it the way it is. So cannabis has got high dietary protein. It contains 33% protein compared to other seeds. It's got 35% of your essential fatty acids, the omega-3, 6 and 9s. And this is the best bit, right? It's in the perfect ratios for human absorption. So people go out and they get their cod liver oil, because that's what we're kind of told. Get your cod liver oil for your omega-3, 6 and 9s. You need it for your joints. You don't actually, because we can't process that ratios of that particular oil from that source. But if you source it from cannabis, it's perfect ratios for our bodies to absorb. So by getting on to, I mean, they call it hemp oil at the minute because cannabis, a lady forgive me, you couldn't even say the word bless you. You know, you couldn't say the word cannabis to me like it was another C word. And that's how we've been made to think about this, that it's such a demonised thing. But if you had cannabis oil, it would give you all your nutrients. It's got all nine amino acids. It's got 6 times more omega-3 than tuna. And like I say, it maintains homeostasis. It's an essential nutrient. The government have had reports. 1969, they had the Wootton Report. That was before full Misuse of Drugs Act came in that actually prohibited it completely. And in that report, which I've read through, it's down there somewhere, it states there it's not dangerous. Cannabis isn't dangerous. At worst, it's like alcohol, but not even as dangerous as alcohol. No. So they've known since 1969. They had a report in 2001, which is down there, and then also the Mike Barnes report in 2016, where they've been told repeatedly that cannabis is very therapeutic. People should be allowed to have it, and they should be prosecuted for it. We mentioned schizophrenia. I know I can see you glancing, so I know I'm aware of time. Schizophrenia I've got to touch on because you look at research in this country about cannabis and mental health, and you'll find things like it gives you 4 times more chance to get schizophrenia and things like that. You have to, whenever you're looking at research, and I've done this a lot, you have to not just look at the research, but then you go back and look at who paid for the research, find out what their background is and what their ethos is. Because often who pays for the research often determines the outcome that the researchers find. It's bad science, basically. They're paid off to just tell the public what they want with some science to back it up. And this is the thing, you will literally, you Google something, you'll find it on the internet, it'll tell you, yeah, it's great for this, oh no, it's terrible for that. And you'll find 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. And you've got to literally keep reading and reading and reading all these different contrasting papers, or find an independent source. So you look at Israel. Israel's the leading front in cannabis medicines in the world. They've been at the forefront of science the whole time. But at Harvard University, this is really good. This is research. Oh, sugar, what was the date? 2013. So Harvard, the researchers concluded that the results of the current study, both when analysed using morbid risk and family frequency calculations, suggested that having an increased family risk for schizophrenia is the underlying basis for schizophrenia in these samples, not the cannabis use. That's what it said, and they had, I think it was 180,000 people, they had a lot of people, and it wasn't schizophrenia, schizophrenia wasn't caused by cannabis. They had schizophrenia, and they had found cannabis, like me, it alleviated their symptoms, and they continued with it. So it wasn't the causative factor. So while cannabis may have an effect on the age of onset of schizophrenia, it's unlikely to be the cause of illness. So all we ever hear is cannabis causes psychosis, cannabis causes schizophrenia. It doesn't. So furthermore than that, they say at a societal level, so across the board, across society, if you want to stop one case of psychosis emerging, you need to, they use the word prevention, but let's not use the word prevention because let's use it what it is. Yeah, you need to prosecute and destroy the lives of 4,999 adolescents to protect one. Because the people that are going to get a mental episode from cannabis are likely going to have a mental episode anyway. They've got a family history of psychosis or other issues in the family. And if they know that, they should steer away from it. And this is what it says here. 4,000 people need to be prevented from consuming to protect one case of psychosis emerging. And at the same time, there's evidence that high-risk populations, cannabis can highly adversely affect it. So to say that cannabis is innocuous is wrong. I can't say it's harmless. It's not harmless. It has potential harms like everything. But, and I want you all to take this, right? Because you think, what power have I got? You're voters. Yeah, you're voters. That's your power. Take this away. Because it could be your grandkids, it could be your nephews, your nieces, any of your kids getting picked up, because that's who they target, the police, youngsters. Do they need to be prosecuted to protect one person from having a potential mental episode? That's my question. So, yeah, ignore that. What? Kelly Chase Mendoza has only just turned 16, literally left school just this year. And they've literally, we're parents, we've been guarded on our children, and we've been monitoring them, where they're going, what they're doing. But as they get older, they spread their wings and they go off without their parents. 7 times you've been stopped and searched, isn't it? 7
Literally,
times.
There will be a group of us walking down, and me and my boyfriend both smoke. So
Cigarettes.
yeah. So we'll be just having a fag, walking down the road with our friends and a bit of music playing. Police car will drive past, turn around and stop us. And be like, oh yeah, you're matching the description of people we've had reports of. My group's not very common with looks. We all have vibrant hair, shaved, weird dress styles. We don't exactly look like majority of people in that sense. So we can't really, unless it is about us, there's no way they've had a report saying that we look similar. Because my friend's got literally that bit of her hair all shaved bright purple. How many other people do you see with that hairstyle?
So they're picking on kids.
It's because we don't know what we're doing. So
23 years I've used cannabis, since I was 16, and I haven't ever been pulled by the police. Touch wood. Hey?
I never stopped. I have no walk away with no further action after
I'm looking forward to hearing that story. Before I go, because I'm aware I've probably talked longer than I have done, so I've got that habit, unfortunately. The last thing, I mentioned the human sovereign right. According to the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, we have several fundamental rights, and these are enshrined in law, and the United Nations Declaration supersedes, goes above national law. So it's so that we can't have repetitions of what we had during the Second World War. So in there we've got the freedom of consciousness, okay? We've got the freedom of expression of identity, the freedom of beliefs and practices, and I believe we should have the freedom of autonomous health choice. So the freedom of consciousness is your consciousness, your brain. No one can tell you what you can do with your brain, what you can experience with your brain, okay, or what mind states you can have. They have a little clause in there saying as long as the state can impose or step on human rights under certain criteria, little caveats of law, which is when it's a threat to the state, so it's harmful to the state, or immoral conduct, or a threat to society and individuals. So they say that cannabis is...
Yeah,
Good question. Whose morals? I'm going to come straight back to that now. They say, I'm going to bring all drugs, but we're looking at cannabis today. They say cannabis, we should be prosecuted if we use it to protect us from its potential harms that we already now know don't really exist. You are, by law, only allowed to alter your state of mind with very specific drugs in this country. They don't even let you know they are drugs. They put them in a different category, alcohol and drugs. You know, alcohol is the biggest recreational drug in this country. It's 114 times more toxic than cannabis. So if you choose cannabis instead of alcohol, I've got this drink here, I've got that smoke, joint, vape, whatever you want to call it, cake, whatever. Cannabis, alcohol, that's a health choice, okay? Not only is it a health choice, as in that's a poison going to kill me, that's going to regulate homeostasis, that's going to give me a particular frame of mind. Alcohol, when you drink it, gives you a particular frame of mind. You use cannabis, that gives you a different frame of mind, a different state of consciousness. Same as LSD, ecstasy, all the rest of it. We're not here to talk about those today. But the same applies. So we are actually denied this freedom of consciousness. You good people here that have abided by the law that tells you not to use cannabis and have never tried cannabis, you've no idea what that state of mind is like or what it potentially holds to discover about yourself. And that's what they deny through the law. So we have that freedom of consciousness we should have. The expression of identity. You know, that gentleman, I don't know your name, sorry sir, Richard in the cannabis suit. He walked down the street in that, potentially he might get arrested, he might get searched, he might get harassed in one way or another, or judged by people in the street because he's wearing cannabis leaves. So he hasn't actually got that freedom of expression without severe risk. Like Billy, my good friend Billy, may or may not be in here. Billy, he has dreadlocks, yeah, it's a personal choice, he likes dreadlocks. It's also to do with cannabis and Rasta community, but it's not entirely, he's not a Rasta, but he likes dreads. He gets discriminated against for having dreads. He's not allowed to express that element of his identity without risk of discrimination. Same for me. If I wear this, it's a target. Well, we'll take that up after. So, we'll discuss that after. So we are denied that ability to dress as we please without being judged, or even to talk freely. Sorry, I got to go home. And to practice your beliefs and practices. You know, to put seed in ground, we've been doing it 24,000 years. Humans have been planting cannabis seeds. Tradition. To be denied that basic right to me, that belief. I know I plant that seed, I know I look after it for 4 months as best I can, and at the end of it I chop it and I dry it, and I've got what I need, it will look after me. That shouldn't be denied. So I'm getting glared at, I need to get up. So thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Can I introduce someone to you now? Her name's Teresa. She is an MS sufferer, and she's going to share her story of how juicing raw cannabis has got her off all pharmaceutical medications with full-blown MS over the last 4 years. I'll just introduce Teresa to you all.
Hello. Is it on? Yeah. My name's Teresa. Okay, my name's Teresa and I've got multiple sclerosis. I had the onset of the disease 15 years ago. About 5 years ago I got really sick, woke up blind in one eye and couldn't walk. So obviously went off to hospital, and they basically said it was hitting very hard at that time, and they basically said if it carries on the way it's going, you'll probably be a complete vegetable within about 3 years. So they offered me some chemo, a form of chemo, which I was scared, so I took. I was meant to, you can have it twice in your life. I had it the once and thought, no, never again. So did my own research, went online, kept coming across cannabis and how it's good for cancer and everything else. So then, it's me.
Jamie, it's not staying.
Just hold it in your hand, maybe. Hold it.
I forgot where I was now. Where was I?
Get reading cannabis on the internet.
That's right, that's right. So, yeah, that was it. So then I came across a clinic in Australia who were trialling it for multiple sclerosis. So I sent them off a little email, and they replied back to me saying that it was showing pretty good signs, not only in halting the disease, but it was actually showing signs of repairing the already damaged nerves. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose, I don't want what they're offering. I had my money saved to take myself off to Switzerland for my little death holiday if I needed it when things got too bad. So I thought, oh, bugger it. So I got myself a few seeds, chucked them in the pots, and grew cannabis. Juiced it. I never grew it to smoke or to sell or whatever. It was always just to cook and juice with. So I use all of the plant, leaves, stems, roots for the juices, the smoothies that I make. I've been using that for about, it must be getting on 5 years now, the raw side of cannabis, and I eat bud like they're sweets. I will eat half a pound of bud like all day long. Obviously I'm not getting high from it, it's not heated. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it does. Obviously it's not heated.
So, does it work?
But it did. mind when I'm eating it raw, but I smoke as well, and I have been smoking since I was in my teens. I'm 50 now, and apart from the usual mental illness from life, I don't suffer from any other mental illness. About 12 months ago, well, actually no, it's over 12 months ago now, I started the oil, Fico, which I still take every day in capsules, only one capsule a day, still munch my raw buds, and I still smoke, and I vape. And in fact, I just do everything with it actually. I make soap, so I shower with it. I then have lotion that I put on afterwards. So basically, cannabis is every part of my life and has been for a long time now. And I wouldn't change it. I haven't took as much as a paracetamol in over 4.5 years. So, and like Phil, they were offering me, I can't even remember the drugs they were offering me for MS, tramadol, and God knows what else. I can't even, but there was a long list of them that they wanted me to take. But no, I take nothing, and I won't change. I won't stop. I'm more scared of my disease than I am of the police, of whatever the police can do to me at the end of the day. So that's about it.
This actually is working.
Can you talk about that concrete wall? Chuck that in somewhere as well. I forgot to mention.
I'll touch on this, but I'm sure Trev, wherever he is, there he is, I see him in his Philtex hat, will discuss the industrial applications of cannabis, which is something you haven't yet discussed. I'm going to do a brief talk on the history of prohibition, how we've got to where we are, and the potential future that we have with this as a resource. As Phil wonderfully surmised in his talk, cannabis is the oldest plant that we have utilised, way longer than 4,000. We have evidence of cannabis as a rub in 29,000 years ago in what is now the Czech Republic. We have taken cannabis from the Middle East and literally put it on every continent that man has settled on this far. The only reason it isn't on the Antarctic is because it's too bloody cold. But I guarantee you, if we interbreed some rid of Atlas strains, we can get something to grow there, you know what I mean? So, the British Empire, we set sail from Hampshire, which was Hampshire. Our sails, whose rigging, whose ropes were made from cannabis, that were sealed with a cannabis resin. The lamps, which lit the ships, were also using and burning cannabis oil. The sailors themselves, people were growing it and using it as their clothing materials, their uniforms and everything else that they were utilising. It was a requisite to pay in tax for a long time under Henry VIII. In the colonies, when there was 13 colonies in the US before the American Revolution, they could pay in their taxes in hemp cannabis and get a massive discount because it was more valuable than money. This is how much of a commodity this resource really is. Henry Ford, as you may know from Ford motor vehicles, he had discovered something that we'd known in a previous life, as it were. As Graham Hancock may attest, I don't know if you know him or his work, they call him a pseudo-archaeologist, although he's not, he is an actual archaeologist, has discovered that we are a species with amnesia. We are far older than they tell us we are. We now have evidence of Homo sapiens, the same people that you are and I am here today, 300,000 years old. The current narrative that suggests that us as people, modern man, settled down 10,000 years ago with the agricultural revolution. This is just not true. It just isn't, plainly. Look around the world. Look at some of the temples. Look at some of the places that we have created. These way outstrip any of our estimates. I mean, even some of the consensus on Egypt, for example, ancient Egypt, and when the Sphinx and whatnot is built, the discrepancy is thousands, tens of thousands of years in that. So, with that narrative, this false truth that we're only 10,000 years old, they've said to us that then this demon weed, this devil lettuce, cannabis, suddenly sprung up out of nowhere and is a threat to us. Well, no, we've evolved in conjunction with this symbiotically and a symbiosis. We have photocannabinoids, exterior, exogenous cannabinoids. We produce, as Phil mentioned earlier, endogenous cannabinoids. They are the part of the endocannabinoid system that regulates all vertebrate animals. Yes, we did have it in our diet, and this is one of the ways we got it supplemented. But the main way we regulate endogenous cannabinoids is through exercise and is through diet of omegas, which are available in many other food sources. So it's hemp seed oil and raw cannabis has the perfect omega balance. So it's a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to 1. In our current Western diet, we are taking far too much of omega-6 into our diet. What they're then saying to compensate is take cod liver oil, fish tablets, which are massively high in cholesterol. Cannabis isn't. Cannabis seed oil is a perfect protein. It's got all 20 amino acids, the 9 essential and the 11 non-essential. The essential ones are the ones that we cannot synthesize elsewhere in nature. We need to consume in our diet. So the utilization of hemp seed oil would be perfect for this, because then you still have the rest of the plant. As was also mentioned, the arbitrary definition seemingly between hemp and cannabis. There are genetic differences in some of the particular strains that we have bred for hemp. We need more fibre, so these are generally sativa strains, as it were, because they're much bigger. You can get them up to literally 15, 16 feet. These are huge, monstrous plants, and they have a thicker husk. They are better building material. One of the things they can do is build hempcrete, which is this. This is literally powdered limestone, water, and cannabis. That is mold resistant, pest resistant, flame resistant. You can literally try and set it on fire at 500-600 degrees, nothing will happen. It is carbon negative when it is grown because it sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. Cannabis, when it is grown, takes 325 kilograms of raw carbon from the atmosphere per ton. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, 325 kilograms per ton grown, which is like nothing else in nature, you know what I mean? It's one of the fastest growing plants, it's one of the hardiest plants, it can literally grow in all environments. Obviously, what we'd like to utilise it for in terms of the flowers, so there's particular light cycles we all have to get it right for. But as a resource, the history of humanity is built on this plant.
It's a nitrogen fixer as well.
It's a what, sorry?
Nitrogen fixer.
Nitrogen fixer, yeah.
We live on a very nitrogen poor planet.
We do indeed.
Sucks nitrogen out the atmosphere, puts it into the planet. Good.
There you go, something else for us all to learn. Yeah, see, cannabis is an important regulatory plant, not just for us, but for the planet. As we said, the way it sequesters carbon, its roots go deeper than most other plants, so it actually holds together and stops land breaks up and land slippage. So what we have in the world currently is a massive problem for deforestation. We're cutting this down to create timber, for paper mulch and various other things, which can only be recycled 3 or 4 times. Cannabis itself, as paper, can be recycled up to 8 or 9 times. It's 3 times more versatile through recycling. We can utilise it to replace all petroleum and plastics. This was something that Henry Ford had discovered. The diesel engine, in fact, was designed to run on hemp seed oil and sunflower seed oil. You know what I mean? Biofuels.
Ethanol. It makes ethanol.
Yeah, exactly. It's ethanol derived from...
Clean petrol.
Exactly, burns clean. But then Rudolph Diesel was on a boat crossing the Northern Channel and happened to fall off it on the way to a diesel unification conference. Next thing we know, boom, you've got petroleum diesel, and we've seen what's happening there. Interestingly, as I said, the history, this is a bit sporadic, I apologise, but the history of this is that it's the longest thing that we have utilised, the most versatile. As somebody estimated, I think it was Jack Harris, that there's 50,000 uses for this plant. And that was at a time before.
100,000.
I'd say even more. With what we now know with graphene technology. I mean, in Manchester, we discovered using carbon composite, so raw charcoal, graphene. We then discovered, Canadian scientists discovered you could make it using cannabis. The production of which, I believe Trev might correct me on this, is only $5,000 per ton, whereas...
$5,000.
We're arguing over statistics.
No, $500 a ton. Rather than $2,000.
The summation of this is it's a hell of a lot cheaper. You're talking billions for carbon, you're talking, yeah. I've just come back from America recently and seen a lot of farms and factories where they have tons. You're talking 50, 60 tons of it, just stuck up the side of it. because of the law, and this is the main point of this, what has happened with our relationship with this plant, is at some point in our history, they decided to separate us from this. Obviously, people will point to people like William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper merchant whose yellow press was very analogous to Rupert Murdoch and his red top press in this country. So he controlled a lot of decision. Then you've got Harry J. Anslinger, who was leading, I can't remember which institution it was called at the time, which through several iterations became the DEA. At the time, he said that cannabis was innocuous. He wasn't interested in it. But the second that the funding was drying up from him in the current department he was in, oh, there's this devil demon weed. And they pushed this. They then rallied the United Nations over many decades, leading up to what we had to eventually follow, which was the Misuse of Drugs Act, which was what we created from the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs and the Psychoactive Substances Act, and that became our Misuse of Drugs Act. The problem with that is now people only know cannabis as a drug. They don't know the history of it as a fuel. They don't know it as a potential, as a bioplastic. They don't know it as clothing, you know what I mean? They don't know it as a food source. They don't understand that they could literally build their homes from it. They could then drink it. They could then eat it. They could be sat on a couch made of it, dressed in their clothes of it. They could then go to the toilet and wash their hands using hemp soap. You know what I mean? They could wipe their arse using hemp toilet paper. The toilet seat could be made from hemp plastic. There's a guy I just met in Canada who's found a way to petrify cannabis so they can make it into a form of stone that makes hemp-free look inferior. With the more technology that we learn and the more time we have with this plant, we're going to make our future of this, make our history look like nothing else. And the problem we have is this transitory phase that we're in. It's now been 90 years the United Kingdom has attempted to demonise and criminalise this plant, or rather criminalise the people that utilise it. The plant itself remains uncriminalisable, if that's even a term, because it's nature. You can't criminalise nature. But what they can do is say that it's illegal for us to grow it, it's illegal for us to use it, and it's illegal for us to trade amongst ourselves. We're currently facing, what, the 9th and 10th year of austerity in this country. We are flat on our arse. Theresa May says there isn't a magic money tree. Well, there is. It builds homes. There is. It helps treat people. There is. It grows clothing. We're seeing this explosion of the CBD cannabidiol market, and I imagine a lot of you, this will be the first thing that you've heard of cannabis. This is because it's being commodified, it's being co-opted and stolen from us. They are saying that we've isolated this singular cannabinoid and we're going to commodify it, capitalise it, and put it into everything. So it's going into coffee. You've got companies like Coca-Cola that are saying they're going to make a healthy drink, which in the reverse sense says their current drink isn't healthy. More on that later. But the whole sugar industry is going to be replaced with cannabis-derived terpenes. So that's not even the psychoactive part of it. That is literally just the smells and the flavours. The flavonoids are going to be an industry in and of themselves. So this plant, as it stands, you could literally take medicine from it. You can then take and then build homes from it. You can then take fuels from it. It's literally the same field, the same crop can give you everything that you could ever need. And as Trevor always points out to me, is that there's a reason it's not allowed to be grown near schools. It's not because cannabis is somehow dangerous. That plant there is going to sneak into a kid's bedroom and abuse them and harm them. Far from it. They can see their future. They can see everything they would ever need. You know what I mean? So why would we fight wars for resources to continue the scarcity paradigm when we can grow all the fuel we need? We're about to be a very small island in a very, very large world post-Brexit. If we don't start utilising this as a resource, we ain't going to have a future, guys. We really aren't. So if you have a certain stigma, if there is a certain... I mean, I've seen it. There was a woman, Trevor went to see yesterday, drop off some oil, and she was worried about being high. She's fighting cancer. She's dying, and she's scared of being high because of what her government and because of what the health professionals and these other authoritative institutions have said that cannabis is. Look at what it looked like. Somebody said a beautiful meme a few months ago about the Daily Mail having schizophrenia around cannabis. Because one week they'll say, it cures this, it's the best thing ever, the next they'll say, oh, it's the demon drug. One thing that we're not seeing around the information about the schizophrenic argument is, A, Europeans mix their cannabis, or majority mix their cannabis with tobacco. 77% of us, in fact. You know, I mean, that's the vast majority. Tobacco has been linked to psychotic disorders for a long time. That is also the mechanism of addiction. I smoked tobacco. At 10 years old, I made a deal with my mother. I'd stop stealing money off her. She'd buy me 10 Lambert Butler every day. Boom. Then when I met cannabis, okay, these two things go together. That's how it works. And then I had a very disruptive and difficult relationship with cannabis until another naturally occurring drug that our government has decided to demonise, psilocybin-containing mushrooms. I discovered these, microdosed them with tobacco. Now my relationship with cannabis is entirely different. Instead of waking up and going, this is a substance I need to consume, my life is based around this. And any time I got angry or aggressive or anxious, I needed that merriment, that combination of these two substances. Now cannabis is a drug that enhances my life. It is a substance that has given me my life back. Growing it and utilising certain strains has given me the continuity of my life that no other substance ever has. I've tried 16 different SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressant drugs. These substances detrimentally and irreparably change the way your brain works. So you tell your doctor and go, oh, I'm sad. And instead of him asking, well, has a relative died recently? How's your employment situation? How's your income? You know what I mean? How are you being active? What's your diet like? Instead of any of these questions, here you go, the literature says you need this drug and this drug, here you go, both. You go where you take them. You come back 12 months later because the efficacy of SSRIs is about 35%. Meaning the vast majority of people that take these substances will still be depressed a year later. These people then turn to cannabis, their mental health worsens because of their situation. They're utilising cannabis to deal with the symptoms of it. They then go to the doctor and go, well, this has happened, that has happened. And the doctor goes, oh, you're smoking cannabis, that's your problem. No, it's not the fact that I've been in a relationship for 5 years with a woman who hates me. You know what I mean? My neighbours steal from me. I don't get enough money, I can't afford to pay my bills. This is the situation that we're studying, guys. Cannabis is being scapegoated. The schizophrenic link is casual, not causal. So basically, it treats and helps people with schizoid type disorders very well. That's why they come and tend to gravitate towards this loving plant, rather than the plethora of drugs they give you that increase suicidality. If life is worth anything, we should be allowing people to try a substance that has never, ever killed anybody, is incapable of killing anybody. Cannabis can't cause an overdose. You have to remember this. Pretty much every other substance that your doctor will prescribe, I mean, I joke about it often, you can kill yourself for 26 pence with 2 boxes of paracetamol. And nobody is even going, nobody cares about that. Nobody even bats an eyelid. Tramadol, which is one of the most overprescribed drugs in this country, kills more people than all illegal drugs combined. And no one bats an eyelid. This includes the dangerous drugs like heroin and cocaine and crack and methamphetamine and all these other substances. Yet we give meth to children in the form of Ritalin. You know what I mean? When you really start to look at this, guys, the narrative that they've created is fictitious, it's false, it's propaganda to stop all of those things we just talked about, those industrial applications, the medicinal applications, the ability to help regulate and modulate your own health, you to be independent, you to be able to control and govern yourselves. That is what they're scared of. We wouldn't need a government if we govern ourselves. If we're all in good health, there'd be no reason for us to do, I'm not saying that cannabis is a panacea for all of our cultural ills, but I'm suggesting that homelessness, wealth inequality, climate change, all of these things can be dealt with this resource. Me and my friend Trev, we've just driven nearly 9 hours over 2 days to get here from Durham. All we have seen is barren land. Yeah. Literally all this country is land, and they say we're overpopulated. They say there's no space.
69% of the UK is agricultural land.
There you go. And the majority of that serves animal agriculture. Yes?
Well, you can't place them first. How would you get that accredited so it's not being adulterated? We know we're buying from good source. How would you...
I represent Durham City Cannabis Club, and the main thing we advocate for everybody is grow your own. Obviously we have different different worlds there, because our police crime commissioner has deprioritised it, and our own magistrates won't even issue a search warrant if you are committing no other acts of criminality. That is still not good enough, but it's a damn good start. You're exactly right, we do need a regulated system. I mean, the problem is this is a phenotype of cannabis, so whatever this was bred from, whatever strain it is, if you were to get, say, 5 or 6 seeds, you'd have 5 or 6 different variations of the system.
That puts out all the people who aren't able to grow it themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. So there needs to be people that then can't, and this is what the collectives and clubs and various organisations and ideas are in theory for. Obviously, then what they're trying to do is say that, yeah, cannabis is medicine, but only when it's derived into a pharmaceutical drug, ergo patentable. So then if you were to then make, say, a tincture for the woman, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already, for MS, if she was to create a tincture similar to Sativex, come full legalization, she could then potentially be arrested and done for copyright infringement, you know what I mean? And that's the kind of market they're moving towards. They're trying to patent nature, to control it, to create single-use drugs for single problems, and that's what pharmaceuticals have only ever done. So you come in and go, I've got problem X, they then go, okay, here's the drug, boom. You then get 3 more side effects. They give you 3 more.
Or maybe let some of the people know who don't know that there are cannabis compassion clubs up and down the country now.
There are indeed. I believe somebody's going to.
People here don't know locally.
I was going to say, Ben will be speaking on local compassion clubs shortly. But you would be surprised. I can't remember who it was. Somebody told me a wonderful anecdote a while ago. I think it was last year. Of a young girl and a family that needed access to cannabis, and they started asking around. Oh my God, I don't know where to get it. It then turned out 2 of her uncles grew it. You know what I mean? You'd be surprised how close cannabis is. They reckon there's at least a grow on every street. In Durham, you got 2 or 3. You know what I mean? It's a weed. It literally, you plant the seed and it will grow. You know what I mean? You can make it as bespoke as you want, and you can create a market for the kind of source. These people pay obscene amounts of money for what is still a plant, but then you can grow it and it can look straggly and whatever, but it'll still serve its function for you. It'll still be useful. The certain pharmaceutical drugs or pharmaceutical derived medications they're trying to create will be useful for certain conditions at certain times. But as my friend Chris GB points out wonderfully in one of his videos, when he holds a spliff in this hand and Sativex in this one, he says, look, this Sativex bottle deals with spasticity. One symptom, that is it. This joint deals with my spasticity. It regulates my mood, it helps me sleep, it stimulates my appetite. You know what I mean? The plant in and of itself is far more useful to us when grown by us, and the relationship, even just the action of growing it, there's a special relationship you have. There's a character all unique to each individual plant. You know what I mean? I would always advocate that is far better for us. Obviously, compassion clubs, I think, are a great way of moving forward. And come ubiquitous legalization, I think we should almost have like farmers markets, like we do for vegetables. So people will turn up and everyone goes, well, I've grown this, I've grown that. And obviously, there'll be strict regulatory laws, like I've just seen in America, where each label tells you what it was grown with, the medium it was grown in, what process, you know what I mean? So you were as informed as possible. Whereas the current illegal market means you go buy street weed, I hear that term, but kind of just random cannabis. Someone goes, oh, it's just weed. When you go, oh, what is it? You want to know what strain it is, you want to know the terpenes, you want to know how it's going to affect you. There are some 10,000 plus strains of cannabis, easily more, as people interbreed more and more strains. Each one of these has a unique chemical composition. And all of us, if we were to smoke if we all sat here now and smoked the same northern lights from the same plants, it would affect each of us differently. Because it attaches and modulates our endocannabinoid system.
We each have a unique endocannabinoid. Every endocannabinoid system is unique. So yours is different to yours, different to yours, different to yours. So that's why each plant interacts differently with each person.
Yeah, so this is why it's obscene for these heads of the current industry, especially around the CBD products, for them to stick it with some random terpenes and go, this will do X, Y, Z. Obviously in the UK as it currently stands, if you sell CBD, you're legally not allowed to discuss the medical applications of it, which doesn't really help in this current situation. Obviously, they're trying to say that it's going to stop cowboys going, oh, well, this will cure everything you've ever had. You know, the traditional snake oil salesman going from town to town, going, buy this, buy this. But what's worse is we now have that where they're just using marketing and advertising ploys, so there's no actual information. So people are then going and watching a random program on BBC where they'll be told one of like 5% of what they need to actually know. They'll then go to one of these people, and they've learned this, the way to speak, the way to work around this, and the way for you to use trigger words, and they'll go, yes. So they can agree with you, but they can't tell you, you know what I mean? So they just wait for you to say, I've got condition X, Y, and Z, and they'll go, ooh. And then you then pay an obscene price for a product that is probably only going to work for a small percentage of you. Because you need the entourage effect, single-use cannabinoids, without the terpenes, without the flavonoids, without the other 400 components that are created in the cultivation of this plant. I mean, we're on the fringe of this. We really don't don't understand this properly yet they're commodifying CBD to an industry that's going to be worth 22 billion globally by 2020. And yet we still don't truly understand how this works. And not only that, we're dissuading individual countries from doing enough research to figure out how it works. Instead, we're going, yeah, just sell the bloody thing. That's taking us further away from what we need. Do you know what I mean? So we're having the demonisation currently in the UK. There's two cannabinoids. There's not, guys. There's nearly 120 that we know of, and each of them breaks down into further branches. They're saying there's two. So there's THC, and that's bad. Well, that gets you high, and high is sinful. But you can go and get drunk. But what is drunk if not high? You know what I mean? How many of you, and I'll hold my hand up very high here, blackout drunk? I used to drink heavily, and I would always literally just wake up at home and go, well, I check my phone, and I go, oh, I haven't got any messages, I didn't even think that bad then, did I? Yeah. And that's normal. That's our culture's like, that's fine, that's cool. What have we done in the past 10 years to try and tackle this? Oh, we'll put an arbitrary point system next to it and go, oh, just give it a certain number. So then what does everybody do? I've seen doctors lie to their other doctors about how much they drink. If they're doing it at that level, how are we ever going to tackle this? Again, chronic alcohol abuse and all of the misuse, I'll say misuse, not use, but misuse of certain drugs, is a consequence, a symptom of our failing culture, of the fracturing that has happened in our communities as a direct consequence of prohibition, of the war on drugs. In its nature, I can't remember the guy's name, Nixon's drug advisor put it wonderfully in a backward kind of way. He said that by associating the black population with cocaine and by associating the hippies with cannabis and then criminalising this, we could demonise these two groups night after night on the evening news. We could write editorials, we could produce articles that then say that these are the reason everything bad happens. So then we could arrest them, we could spot a hippie because a hippie tie-dye going down the street. Oh, we'll stop him because he's got weed on him. So we hate his ideas, but we can't criminalise him for that because of free speech. But we know he's got something in his pocket that we can. Do you know what I'm saying? As I said, I've just experienced the legal marketplace in America. There are certain population centres, say for example California, one that we think, oh my god, that's like we have a utopia. It's not. Fresno, the greater Fresno area, is a population of nearly 1 million people. There's no cannabis dispensaries within over an hour and a half drive. This population base is predominantly Hispanic, African American, and poor. So this then means if there's no dispensaries, there is no legal market. That 1 million people are still going to use cannabis. So you know for a fact, anytime that any of them have got cannabis on them, it'll be illegal. So it's a continuation of the same mechanism. Cannabis hasn't been legalized anywhere in the world. It's been tolerated for certain ethnic groups, for certain demographics. And you're seeing that everywhere because the people that are making the serious money from cannabis are rich old white guys that have never consumed it. Why is it they should be allowed to make billions with a B, billions, while there are still people sitting in prison for non-violent offences for consuming this plant, for growing it and giving it away? You've got Mohammed Lukman, a wonderful guy from Malaysia recently. Thankfully he's not facing death by hanging. His case was he literally grew an obscene amount of cannabis, if one could describe it that way, and he gave it away for free, derived it into RSO or FECO, full extract cannabis oil, and gave it away. And then the government came after him. There's been such an uproar around that situation that the Malaysian government are now considering legalising medical cannabis. This just shows you that we need these stories to come out. We need the truth to fight against their lies. They have a very well-polished machine. The mechanism of propaganda and prohibition in this country is well-oiled and well-versed. They've created their lies, their buzz terms, like skunk psychosis, which is a wonderful Orwellian trick, because one of the prime strains that is grown by GW Pharmaceutical, the world's largest cartel of medical cannabis, is skunk number 1.
And that's for Sativex, is it not?
It's for Sativex, yeah. This is the farce of this, guys. The more you look, the more you will see. Don't just believe that cannabis is some hippie lettuce that can make people a bit giddy. Yeah, you can have fun in it, but it's also an introspective substance that causes metacognition. It causes you to analyse your own life. You know that stereotypical image you have of a stoner? They don't look like they're doing nothing, but in here is going round. They're thinking of all the mistakes they've ever made. They're thinking of the last they're cheating on 5 years ago. They're thinking of, oh man, my taxes are filled in the wrong form, or she accidentally gave me an extra $5 with my change. All of those little things. It's a mechanism that opens up within you a space that you can better yourself. Whereas what is the opposite? It's the legal drug that they perpetuate and push on you at every moment possible. Alcohol It's a neurological toxin, it's a depressant. It actually slows the connection in the, between the neurons in your brain. It also reduces the connectivity between the hippocampus and the amygdala, two areas of the brain associated with positivity, with empathy, with feeling good. So this then means that if you are even moderately consuming alcohol several times a week, you are constantly under the effects of it. So then when your dad leans in and, oh, here you go, son, and gives you a lager at 15, and then you start drinking from that point onward every weekend, you are never not under the effect of the substance. And it makes you, unfortunately, quite docile in this sense, you know. There are other mechanisms they use for social control, but allowing certain substances to perpetuate is one of the main ones. So you allow alcohol to get drunk to relax and forget your problems, you got your caffeine to wake you back up in the morning, and you've got your nicotine to help you concentrate. Obviously, we're now starting to move away from the nicotine market, and they're trying to figure out, oh, do we move to vaporization, or do we commodify CBD and move that into a combustible substance, as you're seeing in Switzerland. You've got the Co-op and Lidl in Switzerland selling cannabis cigarettes. You can go and buy a 20 box with 20% CBD, 1% THC, because they're looking at a much higher THC count than we do. And people are openly smoking on the street. People are.
The UK is about to change the THC cap.
I've heard this, but this is a conversation for afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just shows you that the types of names that are getting involved in this. So the Air to Wrigley's recently put down 75 million. You've got Corona Beer just put down 4 billion. You've got major ice cream manufacturers getting contracts with major cannabis producers to switch sugars and flavours, artificial flavours for terpenes. There is a flood coming, guys. I mean a flood. I pointed this out when I spoke next to Chloe there at Glastonbury Fest. That what Coca-Cola have done within a month, they acquired Costa for something like 4 billion. This isn't for them to move into a healthy drinks market as they're putting it towards. It's not. They're thinking of a way to, if you can marry the qualities of CBD with an addictive substance like caffeine. You know what I mean? So then they take out sugar, that avoids the sugar tax. Because Coke are one of the only companies, the pop companies, that haven't moved towards artificial sweeteners. Instead, what they've done to get around European rules is shrink the size of their bottles, shrink the size of their cans. This is farcical. What we're going to see moving forward is cannabis replacing all of these unhealthy additives that we've been utilising for a long time. So you're going to see all these E numbers slowly be replaced by cannabinoid-derived terpenes. And the positive health effects of these are going to be so, I can't even begin to tell you. I don't have the words to describe the length and the breadth of the change that is going to come from the utilisation and the correct supplementation of cannabinoid-derived terpenes and cannabinoids. Should I bring my partner in crime to qualify that? I'm done. Yeah, I was going to volunteer Trev because he usually finishes my transfer quite well. Yeah. Thank you again, guys.
Nice one, Tim. Thank you.
We're going to have some questions and answer time after. So.
I'm really nervous, so just bear with me.
me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that Sensi tree. I'm going to the land of Sensi. Anybody wanna come with me? Follow me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that Sensi tree. In the land of Sensi, all clothes are made out of hemp. Makes very good garments, stronger, warmer, cheaper than cotton. 3 times the strength it takes number to rock. There's something. I'm going to the land of Sensi. Anybody wanna come with me? Follow me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that Sensi tree. I'm going to the land of Sensi. Anybody wanna come with me? Follow me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that Sensi tree. In the land of Sensi, the oil that you put into your land is made from the seed of the marijuana plant. In the land of Sensi, all paper is made from the ganja tree. Newspaper, Bibles, and paper money. It proves to be the longest lasting paper of the highest quality. In the land of Sensi, there are no sleeping tablets with side effects. Have a split or drink some tea to alleviate all your stress. In the land of Sensi, all pages are done on hemp canvas with the paint made from hemp seed oil. I'm going to the land of Sensi. Anybody wanna come with me? Follow me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that ganja tree. I'm going to the land of Sensi. Anybody wanna come with me? Follow me to the land of Sensi, where I'm gonna use that Sensi tree. In the land of Sensi, all cars are not run on fossil fuel, but biomass such as cannabis is converted to methane or gasoline at a fraction of the cost. In the land of Sensi, houses are made out of hemp fiber pulp. Practical
Hello. Maybe it's because I have to listen to myself. Yeah. Weird. Hi. My name's Chloe, and I wrote a kids' book about cannabis, and that's why I'm here. Yes. I have a PowerPoint presentation I made with the ultimately rock-hard technology, as you can see. But there's no projector. So it's good, it keeps me on track. So anyway, I'm here because Kelly asked me to come and talk to you about hemp. And I know enough to write a children's book, so I'm barely an expert. But what has happened through this book and through my journey with cannabis is kind of quite magical, and so I thought it would be interesting to share the story of it all with you. So, yes, it all came about through that song, Maccabee. Elkie, who's there, she and I live in Glastonbury, and in Glastonbury, probably most of you know, there's a shop called Hemp and Avalon, run by a guy called Free Canvas, and he makes CDs, and he puts CDs of music together. And one of the tracks on one of the CDs that he gave us was the Land of Sensi. And Elkie, one day when we were driving in the car listening to the CD, said to me, "Mummy, can we go to the Land of Sensi one day?" And she was about 4. And I just, you know, in that tune it talks about all of the things that cannabis can do, and to see it through the eyes of a child and to see how it could actually be possible. I went back to Free and I told him about that, and he said, "Wouldn't it be great to have a kids' book about cannabis, about hemp?" So yeah, I did that, and this is it. It is the story of a little girl who goes to stay with her granddad, and her granddad's a grower, and which is not true, unfortunately. Elkie's granddad died of cancer, and he wouldn't touch cannabis, and that was a bit sad, wasn't it? But yeah, in the garden, she meets a fairy, and the fairy tells her all about what cannabis hemp can do. Takes her to Hempland, and the fairy tells her how we don't need to cut down trees, and we can look after all the bugs and the bees and all of that. And we can make medicine out of it, and we can make food out of it, and it's really good for us. And we can make houses out of it, and we can make plastic out of it, and we can make carpets out of it and clothes. And then what happens is they go online and they look at all these different websites and they found all these different people. And they start to go and look for them, and they find them, and they meet them, and they hang out with them, and they learn stuff. And that is what really happened. You know, I wrote this book, and I self-published it in 2016. Anyway, remember to feel my feet. In the story, so yeah, they meet all these people, and then they create, to get them all together, they create this thing called Hempfest, which is what I did. And because, what happened first? I've lost my PowerPoint. Yes, okay, yeah, so promoting it, I went with Free to Camelford, and which is in Prague, and it's an amazingly huge trade show in a massive hangar, beautiful building, and it's full of, I'd say like 95% of it is bongs and seeds and grow equipment, and there were naked women walking around painted and stuff, and I'm sorry if I swear, by the way, I'm not really good at not doing that. Yeah, and then in a little bit of it, say like 5%, there was a section of people who were so shiny and so, you know, you had some you had a Czech family, the mum, the dad, and all the kids, and they were all there spinning, and they were all wearing their homespun garments, and you had these young boys making jewellery out of hemp stalks, and I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing to switch it to, yes, have bongs and seeds and grow equipment, and growing for me is really, really, really important. But to have it turned, you know, so Hempfest, one of the speakers at Camelfest was Valerie Corral, Valerie Neveroni Corral, I don't know if you know who she is. She was the founder of WAM, which is the Women and Men's Medical Marijuana organisation, I think, which has closed, and it was the first, and they grew in this huge garden. Valerie is the daughter of Nonna Marijuana, who people might know. She cooks with weed online, and but she doesn't eat the weed. She started cooking because she gives it to Valerie, because Valerie had epilepsy. And so Valerie's husband started this amazing dispensary, which they have these huge gardens. They have the gardens still, but they're not able to share their medicine for free because they're taxed, and they are regulated the same as the legal market, which means they can't afford to keep in operation, which I think is fucking criminal, and also a wake-up call to what might well happen here if we're not careful, because I think that it's a fucking plant, and we should just be growing it. We should be growing it everywhere, all of the time, for everybody, and it is disgusting that people like that are going to capitalise from something that is a plant that patients should be growing in their gardens. Anyway, so the book, people started to share about it. You know, I shared it a bit at Camelfest. I swapped books with David Byrnestock and met. You know, it was really cool to meet these people. And people started tweeting about it and things, which is something that I don't do. So it's been quite weird for that to happen. But it got to Australia and New Zealand, and now it's sold in the hemp embassy in Australia, and the secretary of the Kiwi Hemp organisation came to see me in Glastonbury because she loves the book, and it's in the artist in residence at Tweed in Canada, the biggest marijuana dispensary. He swapped books with me for photos, and so it just all started connecting. It all just started to become a web. All around with this little kids book. So yes, these connections kept happening, kept going to cannabis events like Mary Jane in Berlin, where I met a woman called Ursula Mock, who makes she makes fabric out of hemp, but she has got the machines designed. She works with 4 different countries because she can't just do it in Germany. She's got special machines, she's got special fabric, so her clothes, they sit really well and they're just really beautiful. So basically, I'm just going to tell you about some of the people who I met and some of the ways in which then I ended up making Hempfest. There's a banker called Nathaniel Loxley, who now, he stopped being a banker last week, I think, was his last shift. He's really shifted my mind about bankers. He stopped being a banker, he stepped out of it and became a hemp farmer because his partner died of cancer when she was 26.
What's his name again, sorry?
Nathaniel Loxley. And he's now started the British Hemp Association, along with some other partners. And he came to Hempfest, which was just the other day, end of September. I do it at the autumn equinox. And he just served teas and coffees, and he's just such a sound bloke. And another sound bloke is Alex Sparrow. If you come across Alex Sparrow, he wrote the Hemp Creek book, and he's a builder, and he's just a builder, you know, but he works with Hemp Creek, and he's so knowledgeable. See, again, you know, I'm just sort of like in the middle of all of these amazing people who know all of this stuff. So, if you can see that, I would love you to be able to see this. So this here, last 2017 autumn equinox, we had the first Hempfest, and it was like a magical spell. All of these people that this book had somehow got to know about through tweeting and chirping and things, they were attracted to this thing. And it was in a field in Glastonbury, and I got a graphic designer who used to be a raw chef who was into the idea as well to make this poster, which made it look like it was quite professional, and it wasn't at all. It was a bloody nightmare, because it was huge. It was far bigger than I estimated. I hadn't really thought about it. At the time, I was taking oil that Free gave me every day, which I don't do anymore, and that might have something to do with it. You know? I was like a foot off the ground all of the time, but that's no longer part of my medication regime. Yeah, after that, I had a bit of a breakdown, I think. I was pretty miserable for a while. It was like, everything was put into that, and I was trying to home educate Elkie, who's hiding there, and various things happened, you know, and my dad was sick, blah, 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 and I just lost it, and I also stopped taking oil at that time, which is interesting. It's like everything came up to meet me that I'd potentially been suppressing with the use of the cannabis, which is a sort of shadow aspect of it that I sometimes think about. I went to Bristol Children's Club, and I was there with my little stall sharing my books and some edibles that I make, because I grow and I make stuff out, you know, it's outdoor grown, you grow on the levels. And a friend of mine just had some of his plants taken, and they were 15 foot tall. It grows so well out there, but anyway, yes, lost the plot. Sacked off cannabis, sacked it all off really, just thought, yes, Bristol Cannabis Club, when I went there I just felt like everyone was just flipped at some point. It was like everybody was in a room and hanging out and okay, and it was all fine, and everybody was present, and there was a whole bank of dealers with dabs, and just suddenly it just went, and it was like I was just there by myself. And everybody was was so high that it was a bit weird. And just everything shifted in that time over the winter of 2017. And I thought I wouldn't work with it again. I thought that I wouldn't work with cannabis again. I thought I wouldn't work with Hempfest again. I couldn't even look at the book. I was just like, oh my god, shit. However, people were still coming to me, and because of Hempfest and because of the book, and connecting with me. And one of them is a guy called David O'Carroll, and he has a company called Hemp Hero, and it's zero waste soap. And it sounds so boring, but it actually saved me, saved it, in that not only does he make soap out of only hemp oil and water, he's an expert in Korean natural farming. And Korean natural farming is, for me, one of the answers to all of our problems. It's a handful of leaf mulch from the forest floor into a barrel of water with plant matter, and the microbes in that barrel, they regenerate the soil. And this is one of the major things that we face, is the problems with our soil. That, that when I found out about that, I was just like, oh my god, it's all going to be okay. It's actually going to be okay. So yes, he got in touch, we talked about soap, and I started to feel like maybe I could do it again. The other thing is I got really shafted by my friends in a grow project. That was another thing that, and then another woman that got in contact with Shiona Redmond. She started Grace's London, which is a company which makes CBD products. I think maybe did she send some? No. They're beauty products, but they're beauty products because she can't tell anybody what they actually do. And my friend who has fibromyalgia, she's been rubbing it on her shoulders, and her pain has just diminished. These are beauty products that sell in Selfridges that she can't tell you what they can do, but they're amazing. So she was another person that made me, get fired up again about all this. So at the end of just gone September, we had another Hempfest, and it was different. It wasn't in the field, and it was in a kind of indoor-outdoor venue, and it was much more manageable, and it was much more, it was beautiful. I put a lot more effort into the children this time, because I found that what can happen when people are at a cannabis festival is they get a bit ungrounded and the kids go a bit mental because their parents are not really present. So we had a shitload of kids' activities, and it was really, really, really great. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. Simba came and did a really great talk, and Clark French came and did a talk, and Shona came and did a talk. And David O'Carroll came and talked. But I got them to announce that this is a talk about growing, and it was the most well-attended talk in the whole of Hempfest because it was about Korean natural farming. But the thing that I want to tell people who smoke cannabis is about the bioaccumulation that cannabis does. It cleans the soil, which is an amazing thing for the soil. But if you're smoking something that has been grown with toxic shit in, that's going to potentially make you mental. And I think that's something that isn't talked about. I don't know why. But if we can feed our plants with natural fertilisers, then yeah, happy days. Yes, I suppose that's probably it. I've got another book, and I just need to have time to make it. And she continues to inspire me, even though she knows that the land of sense is not yet real. But yeah, I actually feel like now it potentially could be, because look at me, I'm all nervous and shy and whatever. But okay, I'm doing it, you're doing it, you're doing it, and therefore it's going to happen. It's going to be okay.
We'll be back shortly.